I think back to the day it all began, the day I realized something was off in my marriage to Jess. We had been together for over a decade, and although life had thrown us a fair share of challenges, I always thought we were solid. We were in the midst of planning a vow renewal. It was supposed to be our moment, a reaffirmation of our love after years of ups and downs. But looking back, maybe it was all a distraction for her. Jess had always been the more dominant partner, charming, quick-witted, and a bit of a diva, to be honest. I loved her for it, or at least I thought I did. Those traits made her the center of attention, and I was content to be her supporting actor. But as we got deeper into planning the ceremony, I noticed subtle changes. She seemed more distracted, often glued to her phone instead of focusing on the arrangements. I figured she was just busy with the details, but something in her demeanor felt different. I brushed it off as wedding stress. It all came crashing down on me one evening. I was helping Jess finalize the seating arrangements. When she stepped out to take a call, I noticed her phone was still on the table, and for a moment I thought about respecting her privacy. But curiosity got the better of me. I picked up her phone, the screen lighting up to reveal a series of texts that would change everything. They were from Tom, the wedding planner. If I had known we were hearing a wedding planner who would end up being a homewrecker, I might have reconsidered the whole affair. The texts quickly escalated from professional to explicit, filled with flirty comments and suggestive emojis that made my stomach churn. It became painfully clear. Jess was cheating on me. I couldn't believe what I was reading. My heart raced as I scrolled through the messages, each one more damning than the last. I felt a mix of anger, disbelief, and betrayal wash over me. The man who was supposed to help us renew our vows was instead playing a part in tearing my marriage apart. The texts were shockingly intimate, discussing rendezvous that I had no idea were happening. I could feel my fists clenching, the weight of betrayal heavy on my chest. When Jess returned, I confronted her immediately. I didn't care about being diplomatic. My heart had been ripped open and I needed answers. I held up her phone, the evidence glaring at both of us like a spotlight. The look on her face morphed from surprise to anger, then to guilt. "What the hell is this, Jess?" I shouted, my voice breaking. She stammered, trying to defend herself, claiming it was just flirting and that I was overreacting. "You know how stressful this wedding planning is." "It's just stress relief," she said, her eyes narrowing defensively. The gall she had to try and minimize it made my blood boil. She tried to play it off as if it was some harmless fun, but the hurt in my chest felt far from harmless. She kept insisting that it was nothing, a mistake, a moment of weakness. But I could see right through her lies. I may have been blindsided, but I wasn't stupid. The whole thing felt like an elaborate act, and I was done playing along. As she continued to ramble on, I felt a mixture of rage and profound sadness. How could she betray the trust we had built over the years for some cheap thrills? Sitting there, I tried to process what was happening. I thought about the life we had built together, the memories, the laughter, and how quickly it all felt like it was unraveling. It wasn't just about the affair. It was everything that had led to this moment. In that chaotic mix of emotions, I realized I had a decision to make. I could either let her lies continue to fester or take action. What would I do going forward? Would I even want to try to salvage this broken marriage? The road ahead felt uncertain, and I needed to figure out how to navigate this new landscape of betrayal. I decided I wouldn't let this define me. If she could be that deceitful, I had to find my strength. But how? The days that followed the confrontation were a blur of emotions. I felt like I was moving through life in slow motion, each moment thick with resentment and disbelief. Jess pleaded for forgiveness, claiming it was a mistake, but the more she spoke, the more I realized that the woman I thought I knew was slipping away from me. She tried to act normal, go back to planning our vow renewal, but it felt like a sick joke. How could we even consider celebrating our love when she had betrayed me so profoundly? I avoided her as much as I could, retreating into my own corner of the house, working into the late hours to distract myself. The silence was deafening, punctuated only by her attempts to reach out, to talk, to convince me that everything could go back to normal if I just forgave her. I didn't want to engage with her, but one night, while cleaning up after dinner, I caught a glimpse of the wedding planner's name in my phone, Tom. That smug jerk who had wormed his way into our lives. I decided I needed to find out more about him, and not just as the guy we'd hired to help us celebrate our commitment. No, I had to unearth the details of their affair. I did a little digging online, searching his name along with ours. It turned out he was popular in the wedding planning scene, known for his flair and charm. But beyond the surface, I noticed that there were whispers about him that made my stomach churn. Former clients spoke of his flirty demeanor, and some even hinted at suspicions that he often crossed boundaries. It hit me hard. I wasn't the first husband to fall victim to his charm. I typed his name again and again, going through the comments and reviews, almost like I was trying to bury myself in the evidence of Jess's infidelity. It felt wrong to be so consumed with anger and revenge, but I was past the point of rationality. It was clear to me now. Tom was a predator and Jess had walked right into his trap. The more I uncovered, the more I stewed. He was in his early 30s, charming with a boyish face and a smile that could melt anyone's heart. Jess had always been drawn to that type, the kind of guy who could make her laugh and feel alive. I was beginning to feel like I was just the stable partner who had gotten in the way of her fun. I decided to confront Tom, but not in some civil manner. I wanted to make it clear that what he'd done was unacceptable, and I wanted him to know that I wasn't going to just sit back and let him get away with it. I reached out to him through social media, and I could feel a rush of adrenaline course through my veins as I typed. My palms were sweaty and my heart pounded in my chest, but I was determined. I sent him a message. It was brief and to the point. "We need to talk. I know about you and Jess." I hit send and waited, my breath caught in my throat. The response came quickly. He wanted to meet. I felt both anxious and powerful at the same time. That night I formulated a plan. I'd meet him at a local bar, a dimly lit place where we could talk without drawing too much attention. As I prepared, I thought about what I would say. Part of me wanted to rip into him, to make him feel every ounce of the betrayal I was experiencing. But another part of me wanted to remain calm, to gather information that I could use against Jess later. The day of the meeting arrived, and I felt a whirlwind of emotions again: anger, anticipation, and a sense of purpose. I arrived at the first ordering a whiskey neat to calm my nerves. I watched people mingle, laughed, and chatted, but inside I was a storm. When Tom walked in, he exuded that usual charisma. I could see why Jess had been drawn to him, but as he approached me with that cocky smile, it only fueled my anger. I stood, my frame tense, as I made my way over to him. "Tom," I greeted with forced politeness, my voice low. "Thanks for meeting me." "Sure thing," he said with a grin like nothing was wrong. "What's up?" I could barely contain my frustration. "You know exactly why I'm here. You think it's funny to mess around with a married woman." His expression shifted slightly, but he still wore that confident smile. "Come on, man. It was just a bit of fun, Jess and I." "Fun? You think this is fun?" I cut him off. "This isn't just a game for me. You're ruining my life." He shrugged, seemingly unfazed. "Look, I didn't make her cheat. That's on her." His nonchalance lit a fire in me. I leaned closer, feeling the weight of my anger. "You took advantage of her and you know it. You're a coward." His expression changed, a flicker of irritation crossing his features. "I'm just a guy doing my job. If your marriage was solid, she wouldn't have strayed." Those words hit me like a bullet, the truth stinging. Perhaps he was right. I had to confront the cracks in our relationship, but I couldn't let him off the hook that easily. "You're going to regret this," I warned, my voice dropping into a low growl. "I won't let you get away with it." He smirked, clearly underestimating my resolve. We exchanged barbs for a while longer, but I left with a clearer picture of who Tom really was: a man without integrity, someone who thrived on chaos and drama. But I also left with a newfound determination. I wasn't going to sit idly by anymore. No, if Jess wanted to play games, I would play too. I was going to make sure she understood the depth of her betrayal and the consequences of her actions. Little did I know this would lead me on a path I never expected to take, one that would challenge everything I thought I knew about love and loyalty. After my confrontation with Tom, I felt like a man on a mission. I was no longer the passive husband waiting for things to magically fix themselves. I had a plan forming in my mind, a way to confront Jess that would leave no room for her usual evasions and excuses. I returned home that evening, my mind racing. Jess was sitting on the couch, flipping through wedding magazines with a bright smile plastered on her face. It was infuriating how she could pretend like nothing was wrong. For a moment, I thought about how naive I had been to believe that we could simply renew our vows and everything would be fine. I stood at the threshold of the living room, my heart pounding as I prepared myself for the conversation I was about to have. "Jess," I said, my voice steady but firm. She looked up, her smile fading as she sensed the tension in the air. "We need to talk again." Her expression shifted to one of confusion, and I could see her brain racing to come up with an excuse. "What's wrong? Did you have a bad day at work?" I took a deep breath, deciding to cut straight to the heart of the matter. "I met Tom last night." Her eyes widened, and for a split second I could see the panic flash across her face. "What? Why would you meet him?" I stepped further into the room, my anger simmering beneath the surface. "Because I wanted to hear it from him. I wanted to know what kind of person he really is." I paused, letting the weight of my words sink in. "And now I know." Her facade started to crumble. "Look, it was a mistake, I told you that," she pleaded, her voice rising, laced with desperation. "A mistake?" I echoed incredulously. "You think sending him those messages, those explicit texts, is just a mistake? You think cheating on your husband is something you can brush off so casually?" Jess stood up, her hands on her hips, defensive and angry. "You don't understand, it was just flirting. We were planning a wedding, I was stressed. I didn't mean for it to go that far." "Just flirting?" I scoffed. "You were sending him pictures, Jess. You were talking about meeting up. This isn't just flirting, it's betrayal." She opened her mouth to retort, but nothing came out. Instead, her defenses began to falter as the reality of her actions washed over her. I had never seen her look so small, so vulnerable. I didn't think it would lead to this," she finally admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "Did you ever think about what it would do to me, to us?" I pressed, my voice rising. I was tired of her excuses, tired of her shifting blame. "Did you even care?" She hesitated, and I could see the guilt written across her face. "I wanted to feel good about myself again," she said, tears welling in her eyes. "I felt like I was losing you, like we were losing what we had. I thought maybe if I had a little excitement." "Excitement?" I thundered, my anger boiling over. "You thought cheating on me would spice up your life. You destroyed the trust between us. What were you thinking?" "I was," she sobbed, the tears streaming down her cheeks. "I just wanted to feel wanted again." Her admission hit me hard. I had been so caught up in my own anger that I hadn't considered her feelings at all. It was clear that Jess was struggling with her own demons, but that didn't excuse her actions. I knew she was unhappy, but I had no idea it had gotten to this point. As I looked at her, a mix of emotions washed over me: anger, sadness, and even a hint of compassion. I didn't want to be the villain in her story, but I also couldn't ignore the betrayal. I needed to make her understand the gravity of her actions, and I needed to know if our marriage was worth saving. "Do you love him?" I asked, my voice steady, wanting to cut through the chaos and get to the heart of the matter. Her eyes widened, and for a moment the world around us fell silent. "No, I swear I don't love him," she exclaimed, her voice rising in pitch. "I love you, I just messed up. I was trying to escape the boredom of our routine." "Then what are we doing, Jess? Where do we go from here?" I felt a knot in my stomach as I posed the question. I wanted to believe her, to believe that we could work through this, but the road ahead felt murky and uncertain. She took a step toward me, her expression pleading. "I don't want to lose you. I'll do whatever it takes to fix this. I'll go to counseling or counseling." I interrupted, the word bitter on my tongue. "How can you expect me to trust you again? You've shattered everything we built together. How can we just pretend it never happened?" "I know it's going to take time, but please, I'll show you that I'm committed to making this right. Just give me a chance." She reached out, trying to grab my hand, but I pulled away. "I need space," I said, my voice cold. "I can't just jump back into this. I need to think." Her face fell, and the tears continued to flow. "No, please don't leave me. I can change." I walked away from her, heading to our bedroom. I didn't want to see her like this, broken and desperate. But at the same time, how could I reconcile that with the betrayal she had inflicted? As I sat on the edge of our bed, I felt torn. My heart ached for her, but the rage over her betrayal felt insurmountable. This wasn't just about Jess anymore. It was about me and what I wanted moving forward. I had to decide if I could forgive her, if I could trust her again, if our love was worth the fight. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay in bed, the darkness enveloping me as I replayed our conversation over and over in my mind. I thought about the life we had built together, the memories we had shared, and all the laughter that felt like it had been stolen from me. But I also thought of her betrayal and the reality that our relationship would never be the same again. I needed to figure out what I wanted, what I could accept, and whether I was ready to fight for our marriage or walk away from the ashes of it all. I knew that whatever decision I made could change our lives forever, and that realization weighed heavily on my heart. The days turned into a blur as I oscillated between anger, confusion, and a reluctant form of hope. Jess kept begging for my forgiveness, trying to show me she was committed to repairing the damage she had done. But every time she reached out, I felt that familiar sting of betrayal. It was like trying to piece together a puzzle when half the pieces were missing or damaged. I spent hours alone, going back and forth in my mind about what to do. Friends reached out, concerned about my well-being, but I could hardly muster the energy to talk about it. I felt isolated, trapped by my own feelings, and the weight of everything that had happened sat like a rock on my chest. I knew I needed to make a decision, but that decision felt monumental. One evening, after another round of Jess trying to initiate conversations about our future, I decided I couldn't take it anymore. I needed to clear my head. I reached out to a close friend, Mark, and asked if I could crash at his place for a few days. I needed a change of scenery, a break from the emotional turmoil, and someone to talk to who could give me perspective. When I arrived at Mark's apartment, he could see the exhaustion etched on my face. He poured me a drink and we sat on his balcony overlooking the city. "You look like hell, man," he said bluntly but with a hint of concern in his voice. "What's going on?" I took a long sip of my drink, letting the burn soothe my nerves before I began to speak. "Jess cheated on me," I said flatly. Mark's expression shifted from casual concern to shock. "What? Are you serious? I thought you guys were doing great with the vow renewal." I nodded, feeling the knot in my stomach tighten again. "That's what I thought too, but she got involved with the wedding planner, Tom. I found their texts and it's as bad as you can imagine." We spent the next few hours discussing the situation. Mark listened intently, offering support and the occasional advice, but mostly he just let me vent. I spoke about Jess's attempts to reconcile, her pleas for forgiveness, and the overwhelming conflict churning in my head. "I don't know if I can trust her again. I don't know if I even want to." "Have you thought about what you want to do moving forward?" he asked, leaning back in his chair, his expression serious. "I don't know," I admitted. "Part of me wants to believe she can change, that we can fix this, but another part of me is terrified that I'll just be setting myself up for more pain. How can I ever look at her the same way again?" Mark nodded, understanding the weight of my predicament. "You're right to be cautious. Trust isn't something that just comes back because someone says they're sorry. It takes time, and sometimes it never fully returns." His words resonated with me. I realized that I was facing a crossroads and I needed to navigate this path carefully. I could choose to fight for the marriage, but I had to decide whether Jess's actions were something I could forgive. That night, I made a decision. I realized I needed to put some boundaries in place, and I needed to let Jess know that rebuilding trust would be a long process. I wanted her to understand that her actions had consequences, and I wouldn't just forgive and forget. When I returned home, Jess was anxiously waiting for me. Her face lit up when she saw me, but it quickly fell when she noticed the seriousness in my eyes. "You're back. I'm so glad to see you," she said, moving toward me. I held up a hand to stop her. "We need to talk, Jess," I said, my voice firm. "I need you to listen carefully." Her expression shifted and she nodded, her eyes wide with apprehension. "Okay, what is it?" "I've thought a lot about everything. I can't just pretend this never happened. You've hurt me deeply and we can't just gloss over it. I need to know if you're truly committed to making this work." "Of course I am. I love you and I will do anything to show you that," she pleaded, her voice rising with urgency. Words aren't enough, I replied. I need actions. I want you to go to counseling. I want you to understand why you did this, and I need to know that you're serious about fixing the issues in our relationship. She blinked at me, emotions flickering across her face, fear, confusion, and finally determination. I'll do it, I swear. I'll go to counseling. I'll do everything you need me to do. Good, I said, feeling a flicker of hope. But I need time too. I need space to process this. We can't just jump back into what we had before. That trust is gone and it's going to take time to rebuild it. Jess bit her lip, nodding slowly. I understand, just don't leave me. I'm not going anywhere, I said, my voice softening. But we have a long road ahead of us. As I spoke, I felt a weight lifting slightly. There was a sense of clarity in setting boundaries. It wasn't a guarantee that everything would be okay, but at least I was taking control of my own narrative. I had a path laid out in front of me, even if it was laden with uncertainty and pain. We spent the next few weeks establishing a new normal, one that was fraught with tension and awkwardness, but also imbued with a sense of purpose. Jess began attending therapy, and I was surprised at how she began to open up about her feelings. It wasn't easy, and the sessions often left us both emotionally drained, but I saw glimmers of the woman I had fallen in love with amidst the struggle. As much as I wanted to believe that we could return to what we once had, I knew that rebuilding trust would take time, patience, and significant effort from both of us. I still had doubts, and there were moments when the anger and sadness washed over me, but I was starting to find a sense of hope in the possibility of healing. It was clear now that this journey would reshape our relationship forever. I had to reconcile the person I thought I knew with the reality of what had happened. As we continued to navigate this rocky terrain, I reminded myself that love isn't always straightforward, and that sometimes the greatest challenges can lead to the most profound growth. But would it be enough to mend what was broken? Only time would tell. As the weeks rolled on, Jess and I found ourselves in a precarious dance of emotions. Therapy was a double-edged sword. While it forced both of us to confront the raw wounds from her betrayal, it also opened avenues for deeper communication. I was seeing glimpses of vulnerability. In just that I hadn't witnessed in years, but the scars of her actions were still fresh in my mind. Every session seemed to peel back another layer of pain. Jess would cry, expressing her guilt and remorse, while I often found myself sitting in silence, processing my own feelings. It was exhausting, but I felt a strange sense of clarity through the chaos. We were working on our communication, digging into what had led her to seek validation outside our marriage, and it felt like we were slowly beginning to understand each other again. One evening, after a particularly emotional therapy session, Jess suggested we take a trip to the countryside for the weekend. I think we need a break from everything, she said, her eyes hopeful. Just you and me away from all the stress. It could help us reconnect. I hesitated. A part of me wanted to escape with her to rekindle the spark we had lost, but another part of me was reluctant to forget the reality of our situation. I don't know, Jess. I'm still hurting. It feels wrong to act like everything is okay when it's not. Please, she pleaded, her voice softening. I know things are far from perfect, but I think we can use this time to start fresh. I want to show you how committed I am to us. After mulling it over, I agreed. We packed our bags and headed out to a small cabin tucked away in the mountains. As we drove, I tried to push aside my reservations. The scenery was stunning, rolling hills and vibrant fall foliage, and for a moment I allowed myself to feel a glimmer of hope. Perhaps this could be a step towards mending our fractured relationship. Once we arrived, the cabin felt like a different world. It was cozy and inviting, its rustic charm enveloping us like a warm hug. Jess set about lighting a fire while I unpacked. The flickering flames cast playful shadows on the walls, creating a serene atmosphere that almost felt romantic. We spent the first evening cooking dinner together, trying to rediscover the joy we once had in each other's company. We laughed over shared memories, and I felt the tension start to ease. For a moment I forgot about the betrayal, but as the night deepened, the shadows of our reality crept back in and I found myself retreating into my thoughts. Later, as we sat by the fire sipping wine, Jess turned to me with a serious expression. "I want to talk about us," she said, her voice steady. "I know we're still figuring things out, but I want to make a commitment to us. I want to show you that I can be the partner you deserve." "Jess," I started, feeling the weight of her words. "No, let me finish," she said, her gaze unwavering. "I know I messed up. I don't want to be that person anymore. I want to focus on rebuilding our foundation, and that starts with being transparent with each other." As she spoke, I felt a mix of hope and skepticism. It was easy to promise change; actions were what truly mattered. "I appreciate that, but it's going to take time for me to trust you again," I said carefully. "I understand," she replied, looking genuinely hurt but resolute. "I'm willing to put in the work. I've started to realize that I need to communicate my feelings, to not just push you away when things get tough. I want to be vulnerable with you. Vulnerability is a two-way street, Jess," I cautioned. "I need to be able to share my feelings too, and right now I'm still grappling with a lot of anger." "I want to hear it all," she insisted, her voice earnest. "I want to know what you're feeling and how I can help. I don't want to keep sweeping things under the rug." This openness was a promising sign, but I still felt the weight of doubt on my shoulders. "It's a lot to process, Jess. I'm not sure where I stand yet. I love you, but love alone won't fix this." "I know," she whispered, tears brimming in her eyes. "But I want to fight for us. I'll do whatever it takes." I searched her eyes for sincerity, and for the first time in weeks I felt a flicker of hope. "Okay," I said slowly. "Let's take this one step at a time." The next day we spent time hiking through the woods, the crisp air invigorating my senses. It felt good to be outside, away from the chaos of our lives. As we walked, we talked openly about our hopes and fears for the future. I expressed my apprehensions about her past decisions, while she revealed her struggles with feeling inadequate in our relationship. "Sometimes I felt like you were so focused on work that I was getting lost in the background," she admitted. "I didn't know how to reach out to you, so I sought attention elsewhere. It was wrong, and I regret it deeply." I nodded, feeling a mix of sadness and understanding. "I wish you had come to me instead. I would have listened." We hiked in comfortable silence for a while, and I began to feel a sense of connection growing. Maybe we could find our way back to each other. But just as I was starting to believe in the possibility of healing, my phone buzzed in my pocket, breaking the spell. It was a text from Tom. My heart dropped as I read it, the words sending a jolt of anger through my system. "Hey, just checking in. Hope everything's good with you and Jess. Let me know if you need anything. We're still good friends, right?" I felt the blood rush to my head, anger boiling over at his audacity to reach out after everything that had happened. "What's wrong?" Jess asked, noticing my change in demeanor. I looked at her, struggling to keep my composure. "It's Tom. He just texted me." "What does he want?" she asked, concern etched on her face. "Honestly, I don't know, but I'm not in the mood to deal with him right now," I replied, my voice tense. Jess reached for my arm, trying to ground me. "You need to block him. He's not part of our life anymore. You don't have to entertain him." I nodded slowly, knowing she was right. It just stung to be reminded of the man who had invaded our lives, who had taken advantage of her insecurities in the worst way. "I will, I promise. I feel like every time I get a moment to breathe, something pulls me back into the anger." "It's okay to feel that way," she assured me. "It's part of the process. I'm here and I'm willing to fight for you, for us." I took a deep breath, feeling both overwhelmed and comforted by her words. "Let's focus on the here and now. We have a lot to work on, and I'm willing to try." We returned to the cabin later that evening, the weight of the day having brought a sense of unity between us. As we settled in for the night, I made a decision. I was going to take control of my feelings, not let Tom or Jess's past dictate my emotional state any longer. Would it be an easy journey? No. But I was ready to take that first step, to confront the challenges ahead, and see if we could rebuild our life together from the ground up. The path was unclear, but at least we were willing to walk it together. As I lay in bed that night, I realized that the future remained uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, I felt a hint of optimism creeping in. Maybe, just maybe, we could turn this mess into something beautiful again. The following weeks were a combination of tension and tentative progress. Jess and I dedicated ourselves to therapy, each session peeling back more layers of our relationship. I began to understand not only her motivations, but also my own shortcomings. It became clear that we each had contributed to the cracks that had formed in our marriage, albeit in different ways. One afternoon, Jess and I were sitting on the couch, going through old photo albums. The pictures captured us at various stages of our relationship, young and carefree at the beach, laughing during holiday gatherings and celebrating milestones. As we flipped through the pages, nostalgia washed over me, filling the room with warmth that felt almost foreign. "I remember this day," Jess said, pointing at a picture of the two of us dancing at a friend's wedding. Her voice was soft, almost wistful. "You twirled me around like I was a princess." I chuckled, feeling a pang of sadness mixed with fondness. "I remember you laughing so hard you almost fell over. Your happiness was infectious." Her eyes glistened with unshed tears. "I want to get back to that," she whispered. "I want us to feel that joy again." "Me too," I said, my heart aching at the thought of how far we had fallen from those happy moments. "But it's going to take time. We have to keep working on our foundation." She nodded, determination etched on her face. "I'm committed to this. I want to be open and honest with you, and I want to rebuild our trust." As we continued to look through the album, I felt a sense of hope begin to grow. Sure, the road ahead was still uncertain, but I believed we could navigate it together if we both remained committed. Later that week, I received a text from Tom again. It was casual, almost too casual, asking how the vow renewal was coming along. My initial reaction was anger, but I took a moment to breathe. I had come too far to let him dictate my feelings. I decided I wouldn't respond. He didn't deserve the attention. I shared the text with Jess that evening, and to my surprise, she didn't react with anger. Instead, she looked thoughtful. "You know you have the right to set boundaries. You don't have to engage with him at all. Just block him if that's what you need." Her calmness in the face of the situation shocked me. "You're right. I've let him linger in the background for too long. He doesn't get to have a say in our lives anymore." The weeks turned into months, and slowly but surely, we began to rebuild our relationship. We practiced open communication, often discussing our feelings before they turned into resentment. Jess took the initiative to reach out to friends and family, trying to create a support network that reminded her of the love and commitment she had outside of our marriage. One evening, as we were preparing dinner together, Jess turned to me, her expression serious. "I've been thinking about how I can show you that I'm serious about changing. I want to plan a date night, a real one, just us, no distractions." I smiled, appreciating the effort she was putting in. "That sounds great, let's do it." When the night arrived, Jess had transformed our dining room into a romantic setting, complete with candles and soft music. As we sat across from each other, I felt a wave of warmth wash over me. "Thank you for doing this," I said, genuinely touched. "It's been a long time since we've had a moment like this. I want to create new memories, positive ones," she replied, her eyes shining. "I want to show you how much you mean to me." We spent the evening reminiscing about our journey together, both the highs and the lows. We laughed about silly moments and shared dreams for the future, allowing ourselves to imagine a life beyond the pain. It was cathartic, and as I looked into her eyes, I felt a flicker of the connection we once had. But lingering in the back of my mind was still the question of whether or not I would ever fully trust her again. The path to rebuilding that trust felt daunting. However, I also realized that it wouldn't be helpful for me to dwell on it constantly. Healing takes time, and I needed to give myself permission to move forward, even if it was one small step at a time. As the night unfolded, Jess reached across the table, holding my hands in hers. "I know I hurt you and I can't change the past, but I want you to know that I'm committed to making things right. I'll always be here to listen, to be open with you." I squeezed her hands in response. "I appreciate that. I'm still working through some things, but I want to believe we can get there." "I'll be patient," she promised, her voice soft. "I love you and I'm in this for the long haul." We finished our dinner, the warmth of the candlelight wrapping around us like a comforting blanket. For the first time in a long while, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. Maybe we could do this. Maybe we could find a way to forgive each other and move forward. Life wasn't going to be perfect, and I knew we still had challenges ahead, but I felt more prepared to face them. I realized that love is a choice, a commitment you make every single day. It's not always easy, especially after betrayal, but it has the potential to grow and transform into something even stronger. As I closed my eyes that night, I felt hope blooming within me. We were on a long road to recovery, but it was a road I was willing to walk, hand in hand with Jess. Together, we could navigate the complexities of our relationship and emerge stronger on the other side. That was the promise I was willing to embrace.